to the Cambridge Creatives Q&A with Corin Hardy. Hi, I'm Harriet. I'm the Screenings and Reviews Officer of Cambridge Creatives.
And I'm Tiago, Project Officer of Cambridge Creatives. Thank you for supporting us. We're a student-run creative collective curating a series of talks with world-renowned professionals in film, TV, and theatre. Please follow our Facebook page to find out more about our future events and opportunities. Just a couple of housekeeping rules before we begin. If you have any questions for our guest speaker, please type them into the Q&A function, just down here, not the chat, and we'll read them out for you at the end. Bear with us if there are any technical difficulties. Let us know in the chat if there are any problems hearing or seeing us, and enjoy the Q&A.
Corin Hardy is an acclaimed director, writer, sculptor, and illustrator. He began his film career with his award-winning stop-motion short film Butterfly in 2004. And in 2015, he went on to write and direct his debut film, The Hallow, which premiered at the Sundance Film Festival and won numerous awards, including Best Horror Film at the UK Empire Film Awards 2016. He also directed The Nun, the fifth and highest grossing installment in the Conjuring franchise, as well as music videos for the Prodigy, Keane, Paolo Nutini, Ed Sheeran and Olly Murs. Most recently, he directed 4 episodes of the critically celebrated Gangs of London. We are honoured to have this acclaimed creative speak. So, Corin, when did you know that you wanted to be a director?
Thanks for that lovely introduction, by the way, and hello everyone who's on. When did I know I was going to be a director? I guess when I was around the age of 12, I started experimenting with a group of local friends with making sort of short films, or they were mainly kind of my mind was blown when I saw Evil Dead 2, the horror movie by Sam Raimi, the greatest film on earth, and it made me want to make it made me just sort of, it blew my mind and made me want to experiment. And before that, I suppose I'd been inspired by things like Tony Hart and Morph and Aardman Animations and things like that. And so I sort of had been trying out animation with plasticine, and there was like a magic trick making images come to life, both in animation and with sort of Super 8 films. And really it was kind of the enjoyment of trying to mimic some of the horror movies that we liked watching. So it was around sort of 12. It wasn't like I want to be a director. It was just like getting really interested and experimenting with something that was fun at the weekends and the summer holidays.
So you went to Wimbledon College of Arts to study theatre design. How did you go into theatre and then shift from theatre back to film?
Well, I didn't kind of, although it was a theatre design degree, it was split into 5. So there was costume design and interpretation, theatre design, and then there was 2 courses called technical arts interpretation and technical arts design, and they were the sort of slightly more rogue courses. And they were, technical arts interpretation was the closest course I could find to like monster making and sculpting and effects and prosthetic makeup and things, which you can see a bit of in the background. I really loved the illusions of makeup and monsters and things, and so I wanted to do that as a job, which sort of becoming a director was part of. But at first, I just was trying to physically create illusions, I suppose, and so the Wimbledon School of Art Theatre Design Technical Arts Interpretation degree was a chance to sculpt, model make, storyboard. I didn't go to film school or study film, but I'd come from a sort of an artistic background, and so I wanted to do something that would keep my hands dirty, so to speak. And then, so I came out of that wanting to go into special effects, which at the time were also turning into CGI a lot more, and CGI was sort of taking over. And so a tutor of mine on that course caught me on the last day and grilled me about what I was going to do. And I was sort of, my mind was thinking I was going to go to Pinewood or Shepperton or a film studio and try and get a job as in a makeup effects house. And she knew that I had some aspirations to tell stories, and so she collared me and really enthusiastically enthused that I should make my own film, which was one of those key. You have like certain times in your life when someone recognizes you in a way, or gives or tells you something that you either you don't know about yourself, or you kind of know about yourself but you're a bit scared to know. And she basically said, you want to make your own films, don't you? And I sort of was like, yeah, I do, but I don't really know how. And she said, do that, don't go to work in special effects, because she had done that as a career, and not that there's anything wrong with it, but it was, she'd sort of recognized that I wanted to tell my own story. So it was quite a sudden change of direction, and it went from trying to go and get a job to trying to make a movie, which was Butterfly, the stop motion film, which I can show a little bit of props from if you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I turn on this camera here, the B camera, the walk around camera, then I can do this. So here you go. So this, can you still hear me if I talk like that?
Yeah.
So this is some of the models that I made for Butterfly. This is the lead character, who's called the Boy. And this was also inspired by Ray Harryhausen's movies he made in the 60s and 70s and 80s, like Clash of the Titans and Jason and the Argonauts, and seeing King Kong, and also Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas, or Henry Selick's Nightmare Before Christmas. And then after doing Butterfly, which took 5 years, I then also incorporated animation in this is sort of a Keane, Somewhere in Iwino, Creature, Paolo Nutini in a little jar there. The horrors, these are all music videos. So what else have we got? There's a Prodigy guys up there. Butterfly. So it was animation was sort of something that I didn't train in, but it fascinated me. Whoops, here we go. It was one of the sort of techniques in filmmaking, to create moving images.
So Corin, since you didn't actually go to a film school, like formally, you didn't kind of formally train in that, would you say that it's not necessarily the best route into the industry, that it might be better to come with a bit of an angle like you did with animation, that you built up your own skills first and then kind of applied them once you got to the...
I would say not entirely. There's definitely there's no straightforward route that's the right route. There's lots of routes to do anything in terms of like careers and career in film and the different types of jobs in it. There was something in me that I think I remember having I'm friends with Edgar Wright, the director, and we met at a film festival when we were 15 years old, and we kept in touch, and we write each other letters and compare movies that we liked. And he went to film school in Bournemouth, and at the same time I was like, am I going to go to film school? And I was sort of worried about I was sort of slightly worried about learning the way you're meant to do things, maybe, and there was something that I needed to kind of, like I said, keep illustrating and sculpting. And I always worried that because I hadn't gone to film school, I would never be able to direct a film. And actually Edgar sort of did a bit at Bournemouth, and then I think he dropped out and did his own thing as well. But so no, there's plenty of people who have had very successful film school and then gone on to great success. But I do think as a director, certainly, it's kind of about the other stuff that you love, that whether it's like you come from an arts background, or you're brilliant working with actors and you did theatre, or you've been an actor, or you're the area that you grew up in, like the life experience kind of informs how you go about making your films as much as the technical aspects that you learn at film school. And I didn't learn any of them, so but I sort of had to go off instinct and of contacts and talking to people and asking questions. And in some ways my film school was directing music videos and trying to make an animated film, and so it took a little bit longer as well. But yeah, I think there's lots of routes you can go. You can go and work your way up, you know, through the kind of careers, and start in as a runner, and then, you know, decide you want to go into the camera department or become an assistant to the director, or you can get work experience, or, you know, depending on, I know whoever's watching, some people might have different ideas about what interests them. So yeah, there's no specific route, I don't think.
Which were the directors that inspired you the most coming up?
So I was definitely inspired in huge ways in those sort of early period, like I said, from seeing Morph and the magic of stop motion through Aardman animations and Ray Harryhausen, and the idea that largely one man was responsible for creating this incredible, I mean, he didn't direct the movies, he directed the whole of the sort of special effects and the magic and the monsters. And early on, when I was younger, I was into sort of fantasy kind of movies more than horror. And then I think got into horror when I was about 12, and it became this sort of lightning bolt of dangerous, exciting, new, risky, scary, but exciting. And I particularly liked the type of horror that had imagination. And one of the reasons I love horror is it's got a limitlessness as a genre. It's quite sort of, there's lots of genres within it, but it's can go into fantastical areas, and it could be psychological, it can be it pushes the barriers in ways that a lot of genres can't. And I sort of found my own love of films like Alien, which was a very Ridley Scott's Alien, that was like incredibly terrifying and serious and so well executed, and could have been a B movie in someone else's hands, but was actually like a proper movie, and had an incredible creature. I said Evil Dead 2, Sam Raimi's movie, was like the most inventive, fun roller coaster ride that balanced absolute sort of terror and horror with wacky, wild, cartoonish fun, and every few minutes something amazing happens. To Coen Brothers movies, David Lynch, William Friedkin, Paul Verhoeven, RoboCop, John Borman and Deliverance, and as I got older, I sort of gone back and appreciated a lot of films that maybe passed me when I was younger. So yeah, but largely, you know, it was sort of coming from a horror genre love, and applying that as I've gone into my own films in different ways.
I mean, that's an amazing list. Big fan of all of those. I was gonna ask, like, about directing more generally. How, like, for the students watching and everything, how competitive would you say like directing is, perhaps into relation to like other careers in media? What would you say?
Crikey, I don't really know. I don't really know what it's like to have a normal job in terms of another career. I mean, I've done lots of sort of bizarre jobs along the way, from sort of proper jobs that help filmmaking, like prop making and costume, and working in a wardrobe department and getting work experience, to stuff like cleaning eggs and dressing up as flubber for entertainment launches, and just teaching art and all sorts. But in terms of, that wasn't really the question, I guess. It's competitive, yes, in the sense, but I think it's more of the only people that I kind of know that have got careers in film as directors are the people that they're so passionate about it, they love it. It's sort of driven by perseverance and resilience and dedication and hard work. It's not a career that you can kind of get away with, like you accidentally fall into it and then casually hang in there. You have to really work hard. So in terms of competitive, it's competitive like I guess a lot of careers, but yeah, it's certainly gotta love it to keep doing it.
So moving on to your like specific projects now, you'd like just talked about like Ray Harryhausen, if I can actually say the name,
Yeah.
and how he inspired you. So like when you were making Butterfly, did his stop motion work inspire you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the kind of creative. I think I saw Clash of the Titans when I was 8 years old at a birthday party of my cousin, and we saw it in a double bill with Raiders of the Lost Ark, and that was an incredible birthday party to be at, especially with back in the sands of time in about what would have been 1987, so probably before most people on here existed, I certainly think. And it was a combination of like wonder of seeing these kind of creatures and these stories come to life. But as I got older and I wanted to know how things were made, it always inspired me thinking, well, if one man was able to do this stuff back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and you know, using old school techniques, then I should be able to do the same if I set my mind to it. So it was a kind of a mission. I basically bought a camera, saved up and bought a camera. My best bit of technology I've ever owned. So it's a 1940s Bolex camera, 16mm. And honestly, it was built in the 40s. It's had a couple of services, and other than that, it's never failed. There's no batteries. It's a wind-up camera. And compared to like technology now that you can buy, and within 2 years you're having to upgrade it and change it. And this is a really lovely, my favorite thing I bought really. So with that camera, again, I sort of went old school. Didn't involve any computers. It was all shot on film, lit, built everything practically, no CGI. And it was a slight kind of purity test to see, thinking, well, if Ray did it, and if all these, you know, Tim Burton and Aardman and people have done this particular model style, because I'm not really a computery person. Obviously, I use them a lot as tools now, but so it was a challenge to pull off doing that stop motion film. But I like the look of the results. But yeah, it was inspired by some of these kind of brilliant, talented people who have achieved spectacular results.
Yeah, you mentioned how kind of for your first film, Butterfly, it was yeah, a challenge to start using. What like specifically kind of along the way did you find like the hardest part of the process?
Of the process?
Yeah, of you know, I guess using stop motion like that for your first film.
Stop motion is I find it to be the most purest art form there is, because it involves, in the kind that I like, which is sort of model practical stop motion, in this sense, like I said, shot on film with no sort of CG enhancement. There was something very pure about it, but in order to pull that off, it's quite an insane process, because you're moving a model a tiny amount, taking a frame and doing that for years, but it brings life to the model. And it's painstaking, but it means that every single one of those photos, those images you capture, are all individual compositional works of art that, when played together, come to life. So it's sort of, there's so many skills involved to creating a sort of stop motion like that, which aren't the same with CG and aren't the same with even with drawn, although I love drawn as well. So the challenge of it is painstaking, and that's psychologically really quite testing. I mean, I sort of pretty much spent 5 years in a room, mainly alone, doing this, and obviously writing it and getting other people involved and getting people to help build sets. So it was a labor of love. It was at the time, it was before YouTube, so it was just a case of like, I need to try and make a film to show my work and hope that I can do something that's interesting enough for people to want me to do another. And that was really all it was about. But back then, you know, 3 years into the process, you know, when you meet people, friends of yours, say, how was that movie that you were making? And you go, oh no, it's great, I've done 6 minutes, and it's taken 3 years. Because there was a lot of building and preparing, and you know, so it was the hardest challenge really, was maintaining doing it, persevering through, you know, while your life kind of moves on and your animation takes a long time. Didn't need to take that long. If I'd maybe made a shorter project and had more people directly involved, maybe I wanted it to take a couple of years. But yeah, perseverance. And then, I mean, there's just a lot of challenges within it, but it did the job and got me the next project.
You've also done loads of music videos. How did you get involved in directing those?
So I got Butterfly finished. This was in about 2004, and I got it into Edinburgh Film Festival, and that was another kind of sort of big moment in a way, because like I said, when you're making it, you don't know whether anyone's ever going to see it or whether it will be good enough for anything. And it got into Edinburgh, and then I went, and that was the first sort of proper film festival I'd been to, and it was screened, and that was a real kind of cathartic process, and just to see it on the cinema screen with an audience. In the audience there was some industry folks, and there was music video commissioners. One of them commissioned videos for Radiohead, and a couple of them were managing this band Keane, which was a new band that no one had heard of at the time. So when I kind of finished Edinburgh, I got called by them, and they asked if I'd be interested in doing a music video. Keane loved Butterfly, would I be able to do something a bit like that? And I got asked to pitch for Radiohead, which was sort of felt like at that moment was like, my life's over, I've made it, I've got a commission. I mean, I was pitching to make a music video for Radiohead, and it was right at the tail end of the sort of golden era of music videos, which was around sort of 2000. You know, around that time there was mega budgets on videos, and incredible artists making them, like Jonathan Glazer and Michel Gondry and Spike Jonze and people like that. So I, you know, I'd done music videos for no money and not much budget for my brother's bands and friends' bands over the way, but I'd never done a proper one. And I got to do one for Keane actually, and which was that song Somewhere Only We Know, which became a massive hit. And I shot it in my local woods, and I mean, I was very naive about it, and we were really hyper ambitious, and it was a difficult thing to make. But again, it got me signed to a music video representation company that became Academy Films, who I'm still with. Jonathan Glazer's that as well, and people that I admired. And so then that then got me, you know, music video bands are at labels have music video commissioners. Video commissioners target directors or companies who have directors and say, we need a video for Olly Murs, and we'd like one of your directors, and would they be interested? And then, you know, you write a treatment and pitch it. So for about 10 years I made around 50 or so music videos. Whilst doing that, I was writing feature films to get my next film project ready. But then, you know, to make 50 music videos, I must have probably written about 1,000. I mean, you literally write, I'd write maybe 30 or 40 in a year and make 3 or 4. So the hit ratio is difficult.
I mean, by what you're saying, it's just a lot of perseverance is what has to get you through, and that is very, very admirable. I was going to say, so you've directed like music videos for lots of different artists, lots of different genres.
Yeah.
Did you adapt your filmmaking process to like the different genres, and how did you adapt it to working with the different types of music and different types of people?
Yeah. I sort of treated it a bit like, I didn't say it to anyone, but I felt like it was a bit like my film school, because I was suddenly learning on the job, working with a crew properly for the first time, working for an agency, commissioning it with a budget and all of that stuff, and getting to work with professionals and, you know, cinematographers and production designers. So it was, which you have to do everything for a first time at some point, and then you learn about it. So what I did try and do, I wasn't really the person to call on if you wanted a kind of straight performance video for like a pop band. I tended to do weird stories, and I tried to treat doing every music video as a way that I would also experiment with a process or a technique or a story or a narrative or characters. So most of the videos I made, there is performance in them, but they tend to be like short films if possible. And that's the ones that I tried to make. But as a result as well, there's a sort of, I would either do a small band's big budget video or a huge band's third music video with a lower budget. So I did stuff for, I did a number of videos for Keane. I did, you know, Paolo Nutini, he had his hit songs, and then the third one I'd get, which it was a great song, but you know, and I get to do something more interesting than a sort of pop video. I did Biffy Clyro, great guys. The Horrors, you know, was a sort of up and coming band that blew up in New York, and I got to do a super low budget video for them, but again using an experimental old school stop motion style, and that one ended up winning most of the awards. Like it was one of the lowest budget ones I did. It went around the world and got best sort of music video and best special effects and all sorts of stuff. But it was something that me and Dave Lupton, who I went to school with, just me and him made in our front room when we lived together in London, and we painted 1,500 illustrations in ink on pieces of paper, like a process in our lounge. We were hanging them up on washing lines, and it was very kind of, again, old school and creative and straightforward, but it did the job and got recognized.
Wow. So how do you, I mean, I can kind of understand the process, but how specifically do you think music videos prepared you for working in film and television?
They were really great help. I say they were, like I've never, like they're old and they don't exist. And I'm still a music video director. I have written a few, not for a while, and but not made any for a long time, but because of other film and TV projects. But no, it was a really good, like I said, without having done film school, that was a really good sort of learning, testing, proving ground in a way, because I was learning stuff, I was experimenting, getting away with doing stuff, but it was also a good thing with the music videos, they're fast turnaround. And then of course, if the song's a popular song or the music video goes down, well, it gets promoted and it becomes like a great tool to sort of advertise your work as well. So whilst I was trying to get films off the ground, I put together 4 main film projects, feature films, and as I'd go into meetings for those, and people would ask what I'd done or what they could, or I'd be able to show them, oh, I've just done this new music video for the Prodigy, and use it as a kind of way of showing what I could do as well. So they were very useful in many ways, as well as being a lot of fun to make and get to meet a lot of bands that I liked as well.
Moving on to another one of your feature films, the Hallow. You both wrote and directed it. For that film, what really gave you kind of the inspiration to get going with it?
So it was when I was doing those music videos and I was creating films, and because I hadn't kind of, who knows the right way of going about things. I know a lot now that I can pass it on to a younger version of myself or someone, but you know, I had have big ambitions. I didn't want to do kind of low budget feeling movies. Part of Butterfly was trying to put something that felt quite epic down on film. But the reality is if you're spending anything half decent in terms of a budget, it's likely not going to come from your own pocket unless you're incredibly lucky. And even then it's kind of crazy to invest in your own things, but so it's going to be, someone's going to pay for it, and if someone's paying for it, then they're gonna, the bigger the budget, the more you're going to get questioned. And so there's an equation there in terms of experience. You're not going to get to do something that you're not going to be trusted with. So I had sort of 4 ideas that were all bigger and bigger, and the Hallow was a gradual realization of I need to do a smaller film first, they're all horror movies. They all involved mythology or creatures, or you know, trying to be original with the ideas. And I'd always been fascinated by fairy tales, and as a kid growing up, you know, being read them by my parents, and these sort of 1970s storybooks which had like beautiful inky illustrations. And I had the idea, along with a co-writer, Tom DeVille, who I worked with in the sort of earlier part of my career quite a lot, and we gelled on ideas and liked the idea of doing a fairy tale horror movie, but maybe inspired by something like Alien, and my own sort of aesthetic balance of what I wanted to see in a movie, which was being inspired by a lot of 70s movies like Deliverance or Straw Dogs or Jaws, and then more recently Pan's Labyrinth, was doing a movie that was grounded in reality, a fairy tale that could be real, as opposed to an overly gothic one. As much as I like overly gothic stuff as well, it was so we came up together with an idea which was originally called The Good People, and it was a kind of semi-contained home invasion movie. The idea was a home invasion movie with what turned out to be fairy mythology. But it took a long time. It took 8 years from coming up with the idea, creating an outline, taking the outline to meet producers and people who'd be helpful to get it made, getting to write the script. During the process, you get many drafts of the script, co-writing the script, but also trying to get finance, and getting producers as a result of the music videos and the other projects. And so it's sort of like an ongoing thing. I do a lot of artwork. So one of my processes while I'm coming up with ideas and writing is just sketching. So I wanted, while I'm working with a co-writer or just for myself, to visualize what fairies would look like. So this was sort of first
Wow.
illustrations of like what could fairies look like in my film that would be scary and weird and kind of you could mistake them for children. So I have a number of sketchbooks that have various ideas. This is the Hallow one. So this was sort of like the creatures which ended up being called the Hallow. Again, inspired by what Ridley Scott did with Alien, there was a sort of biological aspect to them, and what turned out to be the Hallow was about balancing mythology with science. So I guess I love Guillermo del Toro and his approach to monsters, and Pan's Labyrinth was an inspiration, but it was also more fairy tale. I was like maybe 70% fairy tale, 30% harsh reality, and I wanted to do the opposite maybe. So it'd be like, if fairy tales were real, what would those things look like, and what would be behind those ideas, and the idea that what would an actual fairy tale book of fairy tales would be like an account of real creatures. So the idea of a banshee that you can read about would be rendered in the movie, and I wanted to tie it into sort of the woodlands and forests, and the environment, and the story, the characters sort of be driven by the situation now with land being sold off, and humans basically kind of devastating the natural environments. But so the thing that was hard with the Hallow was getting the balance between the grounded and the gothic. So it wasn't if you went too sort of gothic or magical, it doesn't feel real anymore. But if it feels too grounded and real, and it doesn't have the ability to have these, what I wanted it to be a monster movie. So it's a bit of a spoiler if anyone's seen it. So these are sort of sketches of set pieces that I had envisioned, and continue to, throughout all the films. It's sort of always trying to figure out defining an indelible, memorable image, which in this case was like, this is the guy, he's got a flaming scythe, he's in the underbelly underground with a creature that's got his baby there. And so I think if you can capture in an image, if you can capture a little story that makes you interested, then that's a good start point. These were like creatures that didn't make it in, that went a bit more fantastical, a bit too kind of creaturey. Stuff that went wrong, that wasn't right. And then I've got something I liked, which was this one. Sort of a bit weird and owly. So anyway, yeah, these sketchbooks, and it goes back to my kind of love of monsters and prosthetics and animatronics, and it helps, obviously, my extra skill that I brought to my directing is being able to visualize stuff. So that's sort of one of the places I sort of put a lot of emphasis on in trying to, you know, be able to show what I want to make. You don't need to be able to do that. You can employ other people to do that, but it's been a helpful thing. And should I show you a quick little bit more on the Hallow? Oh,
sure. That would be amazing.
I'm not in a rush if you're not, but so this is, if I share the screen, hang on a sec, let's do this. I'll show you one of my, okay. So this is a kind of world book, like a lookbook. I put these together for all my projects, and they are, this was like the third one on the Hallow, so it's a bit more up to date. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a weird message saying sharing's paused. Bring your shared window to the front, which is what I think I have. So, but you can see this, yeah?
I can see this.
So this is a book that helps not just like visualize the movie, but it's also partly like a sales document to get people to have faith in what you're trying to do. So it was like me explaining what the Hallow was and showing some illustrations from the movie of scenes, what I want to happen, monster designs, and the level of creatures in the movie. I storyboard everything myself, but I also, when I haven't got the time, work with storyboard artists. But storyboarding's been a really important part of my process to kind of also, like I said, sell what the core ideas are to the important people, whether it's financiers who need to give you money or crew to explain what's going on. This is concept art that Ivan Manzella, who's a top concept artist. He's worked on Star Wars movies and Prometheus and Jurassic Park and all sorts. So he helped me flesh out my fairies into.
Oh, sorry. I think the chat has said they cannot see it. Which is.
So it says sharing's paused. Bring your shared window to the front, which is odd because I have.
You would think after 9 months of 10 months of pandemic, I would know how to do this better.
Well,
I do not know how to solve this issue, I'm afraid.
I've always done this. Let's just try it again.
I think someone says they can see it now.
Oh, amazing.
What about?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got people that can see it now.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, then I won't make it full screen like I was.
Yeah, everyone can see it now, which is great.
Okay, well, I'll just quickly go back. So just for people that didn't see, this is the Hallow. It's like a lookbook showing illustrations of art, of scenes, and my sketches, storyboards, creature designs, and then kind of key frames in the movie. And then this is showing, you know, I'm coming from a love of practical effects and not CG. I wanted to do it as practically as we could. There's a marriage. There's stuff I learned a lot in music video making of what I could get away with physically and what I could get away with visual effects and blurring the lines, which is to me like a really exciting part of the process. But we did create everything practically, including a lot of the creatures full size. And if anyone hasn't seen the film, which I'd imagine most people haven't, you can watch it on Amazon, and I think it's on like Shudder, things like that. And it's I'd say it's like an enjoyable fairy tale kind of movie.
It's great.
This is giving a little bit away, obviously. So, but this is how we kind of achieved a lot of the effects, which people thought must be CG, but they weren't, because we wouldn't have been able to do that level of CG. But it was shot in Ireland, and it was a first film. It was a low budget, but not a mega low budget, because in order to pull it off, that was part of the challenge of why it took a while to get to make, because again, you have to convince people to give more money. So this was showing some visual effects, like the location we had and surrounding it with trees and grading. And this is Cora. He's over here. So I'll tell you what I'll do. If I stop this share, there's me. If I do this, and then this, and then this. So there's the Hallow poster, the American poster. And the host spotlighted your video for everyone. Would you like to join audio? No, I don't. So this is Cora. She's one of the stars of the Hallow. And this is a silicone rubber version that was worn. Well, a version of this was worn by a small actress. This is like a mask. And there's the book in here that also my friend Dave Lupton, who I went to school with, that we made the films when we were 12 together, and he's we're still very close friends, and he illustrated The Nun, the book in The Nun, and what else we got here? I'll tell you what. Do this gallery. This is an animatronic hand, so this is like a fully animatronic. This is built by a guy called John Nolan, who just done Jurassic World 3, and he did all the Dark Crystal. It's not turned on, but it has this nice. This is that little. This would be radio controlled. And, but yeah. Bit of that.
So Corin, how did it feel to go then from the Hallow, where you had quite a lot of creative control, onto like a really big franchise, like like the Conjuring universe, basically? Did you feel there was kind of a lot of conflict in that area in terms of having to stick with what had come before, or bringing your own thing to it?
I kind of jumped at it and jumped into it and went with it, and it was I knew it would be different. They were different processes in some ways. The Hallow being a low budget independent feature film, and The Nun being a studio bigger budget part of a franchise that already exists. So I sort of knew they were different creatures anyway. And I guess you hear so many stories about studio filmmaking, and largely it was a really exciting, comfortable process. And the thing with Nun was, it's come from the Conjuring universe. James Wan, he's a real horror fan as well. So we had a lot in common, and we could just talk like fans of things. And all of, I was working with New Line, who made the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and Lord of the Rings and all sorts of other, they're a studio that knows the genre really well. So I had a really good team. It was also a film that happened quite quickly. I'd gone from the Hallow. After I finished the Hallow, it got into Sundance Film Festival, which was sort of another dream come true, to sort of have my little weird monster movie get into a sort of proper film festival like that, and went to Sundance, and it was incredible. And it went into about 43 film festivals around the world. In between the Hallow and the Nun was The Crow, or a version that I was making, which I had two goes at, which I won't go into as much. So I was set in a certain direction with The Crow, and when that didn't happen, when the Nun came round, it wasn't like I'd been waiting to make a demonic nun movie, or I didn't think I was, until I started to go, yeah, well, that's what I'm now doing. So, I was a fan of what James Wan had created in The Conjuring, and I could totally recognize exactly where he'd come from and what he had done, and loved the sort of 70s vibes of the Conjuring movies. And so it was a different process, because it's just the studio process you have, it's just like a different way to work, but equally you also have like, crews that are all, it's a lot more sort of solid in a lot of ways. Independent filmmaking is like you're sort of clawing by the skin of your teeth quite a lot of the time, and you've got your great crew, but also there's just so many factors to it that are out of control in a way. So yeah, and it was also a script which was just really fun and well written, and once I read it I thought I can actually, I kind of started to realize I knew what I looked for in scripts, because I'd read hundreds and hundreds over the years of doing sort of the Hallow and getting an agent and being sent scripts, and I could recognize that it was a kind of a bit of a roller coaster, and it had a world in it that I could get behind, in that it was a period 1952 set in an abbey in Romania, and it was sort of a bit like Dracula, and I thought this is I can create a world in this film, which is what I try and do whenever I can. But then once I got the job, they were also, unlike the Hallow, which took 8 years to make, and by the time we were making it, it feels so strange to be making a movie because you've dreamed about it for years before. With The Nun, I got the sort of job, flew to LA, had a week of meetings, and they said, when do you want to make it? Because we want to make it pretty soon. And I was like, yeah, how soon? Thinking maybe in 6 to 8 months or something. And they said, well, in like 12 weeks. And also I happened to have when I made the Hallow, I had my first daughter 2 weeks before we started filming. So I'd sort of spent my life trying to get a film made, and took a long time. Ended up having a baby just before the first film, which was another interesting new thing. And also I'd written a movie about a couple having a baby that gets stolen by fairies and turned into a creature and all sorts of stuff. And then with The Nun, I had my second daughter. I say it was my partner, not myself. But she was due basically in effectively I think from when I got the job about 18 weeks. And so it was clear that if I was going to make the film, we'd have to get on with it basically, and then to finish the movie before the baby gets born as well. So that was a new factor, which happened, and she was born on like the last day after the last day of the shoot, which was kind of good timing.
Wow. So now moving on to your most recent project, which is Gangs of London, which was astonishingly good.
Oh, cool, man.
Got me through first lockdown, loved it. So
Great.
you say, like, how did you get involved with Gangs, and like, did you find differences with directing film to directing TV, and how was that all for you?
Yeah, it's funny, I haven't done a talk like this which covers all these different parts of my career. It's like, this is your life. And it was very much, I've been a fan obviously of TV shows, but not really much of a fan of TV, and had always thought I wasn't interested in directing TV. Just going to turn this one off again. What's going on? Yeah. Because I kind of dream quite big and want to make sure that it feels cinematic, and in the last 10 years TV's changed a lot, and we've got like these very epic cinematic shows, and they are like mini movies. So I suppose I was curious of TV, but wondered what project I could do that would be of the right kind and scale. While I was doing, after The Nun, I was also then back on The Crow, and nearly got to make The Crow, and I had Jason Momoa and Sony, and we were in Budapest about to film it when it fell apart, sadly, as films do too often. And about a year before, I'd called my friend Gareth Evans, who's the director of The Raid and Apostle, and because he's a master of action and fight choreography, and I was going to do The Crow, and I thought, doing The Crow now, I really got to compete with John Wick, and I got to compete with The Raid, and make a movie that stands up in the action department as well as the other aspects of The Crow, being a kind of legendary graphic novel and cult movie. And I met with Gareth, and we had a good chat. And then he also said, he's putting together a show called Gangs of London, which was loosely based on the video game Gangs of London. And would I be interested to direct a an episode of it. And I thanked him and said that's very kind of him, but I probably wouldn't because I was doing The Crow. So cut to what was 2 years ago now, and The Crow had gone down, and they asked me again about doing Gangs of London, and it was, so I read the script and I could tell they were like complex and fascinating and well written, and there was this sort of deep, complex crime drama, family based, with some incredible action in them. But I was sort of nervous because there was really not my genre. It was I like grounded stuff, but I like grounded stuff to be applied to fantastical stuff, if it makes sense. And Gangs being like kind of pure crime action thriller, I didn't know whether I could do it or whether I'd be the person that should do it. But to cut a long story short, they asked me, and I took the challenge on. And it was another case of, again, like secretly learning out of my comfort zone. I was very much out of my comfort zone, and really embraced it, and actually found like I learned and got more out of making Gangs of London in a way than anything else I'd made, in a funny way. It was a huge cast for a start. Although The Nun feels like a big movie, it's still only 3 or 4 core actors. Gangs of London has 100, you know. And tons of locations, and the challenge was the same. In some ways, it was a bit like the Hallow. The challenge was a grounded world of crime that feels real, but actually is sort of heightened cinematically, so that you can get away with these insane action sequences and genres that we sort of smuggled in, like horror genres and Western and action and martial arts, to try and make something that is different to what you get on TV.
I mean, I will say I did notice the horror bits in your episodes, and they were very, very good. Soon we're going to have some questions from the audience, so please type your questions into the Q&A box, and we're going to read them out. So you've done a lot of work supporting your local cinema, Picture House Uckfield, for a shout out in the recent months. So what do you think the future of the cinema, the creative world, whether theatre, TV, film, is going to hold in a post-corona world? Big question, I know.
No, it's one of those weird new questions that we've all come to think about all the time. I mean, I'm just a massive fan of cinema, going to the cinema experience, movies that I make being made for the cinema. You don't make anything to be looked at on a phone or even an iPad. I mean, I like watching something if I'm going on holiday and it's the last resort. But it's entirely different in terms of the sound, detail, vision, everything. And that's never going to go away. And it's been reduced at the moment because it's just impossible to get there. And, it's a very strange year to have all these movies, huge movies, kind of stacking up on hold that they can't release, and actually no new content. And so with Uckfield Picture House, which is my local that I grew up going to and love, and sort of small family run cinema, they asked they were sort of like, we can't show anything because we don't have anything to show, so we can only show old stuff. And that's fine, but people now can obviously watch a lot of this at home. So they said, can I curate some things? I said, that's not even good enough. People aren't going to come out because I'm curating. So I'm going to think of a way of getting people hopefully to come out by inviting guests, friends of mine from around the world, to introduce movies. So we're going to put on a season of Corin Hardy sort of presents with a friend, which might be Edgar Wright or Gareth Evans or Chad Stahelski or Andy Machete, in person in the cinema or in person in Zoom, introducing the movies that we love, talking about them over a weekend. We nearly got to do that, then there was another lockdown, but they did ask me around Christmas, and so I put on a mini weekend of Die Hard, Gremlins, Nightmare Before Christmas, and Batman Returns, which was actually, we managed to slot it in when all the other cinemas were closing and Cineworlds had closed, and it was still legal to do this. Anyway, that's a great cinema, and we just got to all support cinemas when we can again. And then great, all the streaming, it's all kind of merged now, and there's obviously, especially now with companies like HBO and Disney and Warner Brothers putting stuff out. I hope that it's a sort of temporary situation that they're putting them out, but it has crossed over quite a lot, but it isn't the same. I watched Soul at Christmas and it was nice, but it wasn't like let's go to the cinema at Christmas to see the new Pixar movie. It was sort of like, oh, there's a movie on, that's cool, and it was good, but it's not the same, I don't think. So yeah.
So going on to the Q&A, this is a popular one. Which monster of yours is your favorite?
Which monster, movie or monster, or both?
Monster that you've made.
That I've made. Wow. Let's have a quick look here. I'll show you a couple. This is one that hasn't seen. Something that keeps. There we go. Like that. So this is a creature that I've sculpted. That's a kind of Yeti-like creature, which is in one of my movies that I've spent almost 17 years wanting to make. So this is one of my favorites, and this is Cora, little prototype on her. So I think Cora would definitely be one, and then obviously have to shout out to the nun. But James Wan created the nun, the character of the nun, so I had to do my bit with her. And in terms of other movies, so I'm slightly jumping around with this technology. You know, in terms of other movies, I think Alien is still like right up there with in terms of like an incredible design, the H.R. Geiger design and the biology and the fear that it evokes. I love Pumpkinhead, which is a lesser known creature in a movie called Pumpkinhead Vengeance of the Demon, which was made by Stan Winston, who was the special effects monster maker behind things like Terminator and Aliens and Jurassic Park. And he directed a film called Pumpkinhead, which is a great fairy tale horror movie. It's the only movie he directed feature, and that's got a wicked demon. I've probably got it somewhere. Here it is.
Oh wow.
He's got a cool design. I love Pan's Labyrinth and Guillermo del Toro's creatures, and you know, the Pale Man. The Blob is a fantastic B movie monster. And then I've got a number of my own in future movies that I'm looking forward to people meeting, but I can't really talk too much about them.
Yeah. Speaking of, someone has asked, like, if you have any projects coming up that you are able to tell us about and that we can look forward to.
I've got lots of interesting projects. It's very hard because because they're all like such a long run, you have to plan and way in advance. And when I learned early on that you kind of have to have a number of kettles in the fire. No, what's the phrase? Pots on the stove. Fingers in pies. Yeah, I've always got maybe 4 or 5 projects on the go that you have to juggle. I'm creating the 2nd season of Gangs of London, which I've been doing all year throughout the COVID world, which we're going to be shooting in a few months. And I've got another TV show and a number of features. So they're all stacking up, ready to make after Gangs. And there's monster movies and horror movies and true crime thriller. And I'd love to tell you about them, but I can't at the moment.
But still very, very exciting.
Yeah, stuff I'm very excited about. Can't wait to make. And you know, these books are full of them.
So if you could pick which movie release are you hoping makes it to the big screen the most in 2021? So if you could pick one to see on the big screen, which would it be the most?
Wonder Woman came out. I haven't seen it. Tenet came out. Obviously Bond. What are the big 5?
Black Widow. I mean, Edgar Wright's new movie.
Oh, it's going to be that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last Night in Soho. That's the film to go and see. Bond, you know, we've seen 27 Bonds. No, it's going to be great. That's that director as well, Carrie, incredible director, said that's going to be really cool to see what he does with Bond. I loved True Detective and stuff. What are the other ones?
What are the other ones?
I should have.
There's James Gunn's Suicide Squad.
Yeah, can't wait for that. That looks great fun. Men on a big sort of old school men on a mission movie, men and women on a mission movie. I mean, in terms of the superhero movies, then I'd say Suicide Squad. In terms of the blockbusters, yeah, I can't wait for Bond, just because it's that sort of what used to be a kind of couple bi-yearly event. But it does, I think this year, because of the director, I'm particularly excited. And Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho is something I can't wait to go and see.
Another question is, if you could be invited to direct any current TV series, or I guess any kind of film, anything like that, which would it be and why? If you had to break your loyalties with Gangs of London.
That. Ooh. I mean, I'd love to make a new version of The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is a Universal monster movie. And they're doing new versions like Leigh Whannell's Invisible Man. He's doing The Wolf Man. But Creature from the Black Lagoon is a bit different. It's like it's harder to update into I like to do an old school, you know, kind of monster movie one, which is what it is. Creature from the Black Lagoon was like 1952 or something, and if you watch Jaws, you can really see the influence of that film. It's a great creature feature. In terms of things that already exist, it's kind of hard. I've got quite a lot of my own projects and dream projects that are the things I want to make. Graphic novels and yeah, not sure.
Well, this is probably going to be the final question. So it's already running a bit over, but it's fine. So, final question: do you have any TV recommendations? And you've given a lot for us during our lockdown terms, or film recommendations that you would specifically recommend.
Yes, I should do, shouldn't I? That's probably the question. If even I said you don't need to tell me the questions, that's probably the one that I should have. What have I seen? There's loads of films that I'm wanting to see. Really want to see Possessor, Brandon.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. What have I watched? I enjoyed The Queen's Gambit. Christ. I mean, I found myself watching. I've got like a watch list of movies that I've watched loads of times, but I just really want to see again. And you know, you go through waves of how you feel that night when you want to watch something. So I've got kind of loads of movies that are crime movies that I want to watch, that kind of also help out what inspiring Gangs of London side of things. And then I've got I'm just trying to think of my brain's gone flat. Hang on, what have I watched? I must have it. Let me see if I've got a list. I've probably got a list of things I've seen. Do
you find yourself watching TV or film more, Corin?
I definitely watch a lot more TV now, and particularly in the last year. But I'm still mainly a film person. Movies. I've been, you know, in lockdown, I've been reading books. I've been reading Oliver Stone's like biography, Chasing the Light, which is brilliant, and it's made me go through Oliver Stone's movies. Salvador, that I'd never seen, rewatching Platoon, JFK, Natural Born Killers. And then I've also kind of it connects with like Michael Cimino and watching Year of the Dragon and William Friedkin, watching Sorcerer and Robert Altman. You know, I love McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And I've been rewatching a lot of old films, but getting a lot of appreciation, and also now being able to see them on Blu-ray or 4K, and I've got a projector. So although I want to be going to the cinema, it's been really cool just revisiting a lot of those movies. But I'm not doing very well with recommending new ones, as I should do. I've actually been watching The Crown as well. Shouldn't really say that, but I've been really enjoying it. So I'm just trying to see. I keep a lot of lists of films that I've liked or stuff I've been watching, but I've got a lot of notes. And
Have you got Letterboxd?
No, I haven't.
It's a really good idea to log everything, and you can make lists and everything.
Right. I know, it's one of those things that I should. Oh man, nearly there. I've got to find something now because I've taken ages.
Perseverance, yet again, a common theme coming up.
Wow. Otherwise, it's going to be a very dull end to the to the chat we've been having. I couldn't really think of anything. Come on, where are we? Well, here's a list of crime movies that I put together when I was thinking about Gangs of London, for anyone who's interested in crime movies and hasn't seen any of these. So, Heat, Leon, The Godfather trilogy, Seven, Zodiac, The Untouchables, Brian De Palma's movies, Carlito's Way, Scarface, Blowout, Korean thrillers like Memories of Murder, Bong Joon-ho, oh boy, I Saw the Devil, We Own the Night, which is a really lesser known movie, James Gray, great movie actually, Silence of the Lambs, Manhunter, Goodfellas, Casino, Taxi Driver, Cape Fear, John Woo movies, Hard Boiled, The Killer, French Connection, The Driver, The Warriors, Kill Bills, Pulp Fiction, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, and there's a French film called Braqueurs. So that's not the answer to your question, but just a random list of crime movies that are all good.
I mean, those are recommendations. I'll put some of them on the list. I think this is all we have time for. I cannot say thank you enough for your wonderful answers, for showing us all your creatures, and for giving us your time. It's been a proper masterclass. It has been wonderful, genuinely, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's joined the call and asked amazing questions as well.
Yeah, and hang in there, everyone. We will all be together soon. Somehow we'll get through this next bit and get back to semi-normality. It's been quite special in a way as well. I think it's reminded us humans of certain aspects of our lives that we don't need to go back to. But yeah, I hope everyone watching has a good rest of the night, and nice to speak to you. Can't see anyone, but I'm giving you yeah, thanks for asking me. Good luck.
Yeah. Please like our Facebook page for more updates and opportunities. Our guest next week is producer and visual effects expert Will Tennant on the 27th of January at 7 p.m. So register for the Q&A on our Facebook event or in our Instagram bio. And yeah, again, thank you so much. This has been great, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
No worries. I want to come in for Will Tennant. That sounds good. I'll be up for that.
Send you the link.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, guys. See you soon.